Hello.
Okay.
We're back
Yes.
for another Healer's Corner. We'll wait a couple minutes, let everybody get notified that we are live and online. Sometimes the notifications take a minute, is what I hear. Let's see here. Now, have you had a good week?
hmm
I was enjoying that slightly warmer weather we had until the bottom fell out today.
Well, this is Ohio. It did not get the memo. So
No, never ever does it. Never,
mm,
ever, ever, ever.
it does its own thing. Doesn't it remind you of grandma though? He does his own thing.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. Absolutely. It does remind me of grandma and doing whatever she wanted, regardless of what, was suggested or implied or told that she should absolutely do. She was like, nope, I'm going to do
Yep.
what I want. You
Yep.
can't make me.
Yep.
Well, hello, guys. I see our friends are starting to come in. Another round of the Healer's Corner with myself and Maria. And tonight we were going to talk about ancestral healing. And Maria, it was actually one of your students, maybe you want to call her student, who kind of suggested this topic. Um,
Yes.
Now, when you get into or want to discuss the ancestral healing, like what does that mean to you, Maria?
For me, I bring my ancestors. I mean, my ancestors are always around me, especially when I'm doing a healing work, any kind of healing, whether it's a reading or an actual healing session. And I bring them around me. And I focus on certain ancestral members of mine, like my great grandfather, who was a medicine man. I bring him in, and he's always present. It took me a while to connect to him, though, and it was actually Zane who helped me connect to him. You know, our our shaman teacher. So I bring them in, and they help me. They're my go-to counselors, basically. Um, I always look at them. They're my first type of teachers and counselors and mentors that I bring them in. And I usually get maybe messages from them, or I get like a flash or something that I need to pay attention when I'm doing the healing. But that's how I utilize them. And, with also, I have an ancestral altar
Mhm.
and I honor them in that way. So that's what it means for me, is bringing them in when I'm doing a session, because they may be able to point something or give my attention to some when I'm with a client.
Mhm.
Also with myself, when I don't understand what's going on, if there's something going on and I need clarity from them. I know I do have guides there, spirit guides, but my ancestors are usually the first one that I go to.
Okay. Now, do you ever work with the clients' ancestors? Like, do you pick up on them and do you communicate with them and and if you do those ancestors ever really help you get to the root of the problem? Like, do they say, well, she's really asking about this, but here's really the bigger problem?
Yes. And I actually ask permission for my answers to bring in their ancestral guides, because we all have ancestral guides. Um, I can't just overstep, and I need permission. And that's the one thing that I've always learned in the different modalities that I have worked on or went to learn, and is always ask permission, because they're not my guides. That belongs to the client. There is a sacred relationship that they have with their clients. So I get permission, and sometimes they are forthcoming and helping. Um, and sometimes they're just around, just watching.
Yeah. I've had that too. an audience,
Yeah.
watching and, sometimes almost feeling, that you're being graded, you know, on how you're doing this. So, I find that I'm more perceptive to the client's ancestors in that moment than I am my own. And,
Mm.
and I'm sure mine are there, but and I guess maybe just where my focus is because I'm working with that client. So what information do I need to know and what's going on and what needs to happen. And so like I'm picking up on them, way more than I do, mine, which is funny when I say that out loud, really. Um,
So your ancestors are silent.
funny enough, like in readings and stuff with mediums, like it's very rare for family members and stuff to come through, honestly, on my end. And even sitting in seances, it is so rare for any of my people to come through. Um, and every now and then, like my one grandfather will show up, but he will hang around on the outside again, like watching and judging and like there's a guy standing over there and they'll describe him and I'll pull up a phone and I'm like, look like this, and they're like, I'm like, oh, that's Grandpa George. But never really says anything, just kind of hangs out and observes. So but guys, as you're coming in, feel free to ask questions, comments on tonight's topic, which is ancestral healing. Um, yeah, I feel like that topic has been a very popular one lately, especially with the climate of the world and what everybody's going through. Um, let's see. Oh, I need y'all to ask my ancestors why I didn't get my Hispanic rhythm. Where in your ancestral line is your emo? I feel like that one took over the line there. um, but I feel like ancestors are very important in a lot of healing work, even if it's just helping you better understand what your client is
Hmm.
needing versus what they think or what they are perceiving versus like what the major underlying issue is. Because sometimes they're not even aware that it goes deeper than what they're presenting. Um, have you ever had an instance, where um, an ancestor comes through and maybe you were unsure of if they were yours or the client because of it being like a new type of ancestor coming through?
Well, usually when I feel that when I'm connected to the client's energy, the minute that they walk in with me, I'm already connected to the energy, so I can pinpoint there might be an ancestor that's coming, stepping forward. I have clients that the ancestors just give out the whole entire, it outs them basically. You have a client, whether it's a reading or a healing, you know, mostly it comes up in the reading, and I'm getting, like somebody's aunt, somebody's grandmother, somebody just tell them, well, you need to ask them about this. You need to ask them about this. And I'm going, okay. It's like I had a client, she came, she has come to me several times, and I remember the first time I said, you need to drink more water, and she said, how do you know that? I go, so your ancestors coming in to tell me you need to drink more water. And so I saw her recently, and I said, she go, I'm drinking more water. I go, that's good. Tell me about the sugar. And she said, I'm trying my best. And I said, tell me about the sugar. I go, they're pretty much out. They gave you your secret out. It's not candy. And I said, yeah, but sugar it's pop, it's fruit juice, it's cake, it's not candy. You know. She go,
Mhm.
oh, darn it. She go, they outs me. I go, exactly.
Gonna air your dirty little secrets.
You just bring it all out. So I love those, because you might have a client that's trying to, well, I'm drinking more water, or I'm doing this, I'm exercising. And I say, okay, that's fine, that's great. But how about this?
Mhm.
Well,
Oh, good question, Erica. She says, I'm more than half German, and it's really hard for me connecting to that side for obvious reasons. What advice do you have going about vetting those kind of ancestors of ours? I know not all my German ancestry is what is like what I'm afraid of, but the fear is making me hesitant. And that was going to be kind of a question I was going to bring up later, but we'll just jump right into it to talk about is, really, do you have to work with and venerate every ancestor? Not really.
mm,
And, how do you vet out those that are, most beneficial?
well, I usually when I have there when I like my great grandfather, that's for example, I was really curious with him because of course he and I did not we came into this world at a different time. So I knew about him and I was really curious about him. I had no pictures of him. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know. All I know is there was like stories, family stories. So I wanted to connect to him. I'm not connected to all of my ancestors. He was the one that it was an interest. I wanted to know exactly what he was about, what he stand for in the family line. It was nice to know that he was respected in what he did, versus I had family members that they were considered crazy. Uh, but I don't vet all of my ancestors. I know there's quite a few of them. They may not agree, even though they're in the spirit world, they may not agree of certain things that I dealt with. There's some old, like, how you have that ongoing story of
Mhm,
this and that and that and that. And sometimes, like, I don't agree with some of their, ways that they did things. So I usually don't connect to those ancestors. I know they're there, but I don't
mhm.
connect to them.
Now, to kind of like take off on Erica's question, so let's say that an ancestor of questionable, history and actions come forward and they're like, I would like to, heal that energy, that those actions that I did to step into now talking about healing the ancestor that is past. We went over a little bit with that in like our shaman group, but I'm curious to see what um pranic healing says, on that.
As far as pranic healing is concerned, we trauma is trauma. We
Mhm,
don't care if it's something that's in the bloodline or generational. We don't care if it's something that you have created or believed into. Trauma is trauma. So we go ahead and just start clearing the energy of it. And we don't put a lot of stake in where it's coming from. We just know trauma is trauma.
mhm,
Um, Here's an example. I did a healing on someone, and I noticed that my ancestors and my guides said stop, because I was preparing this person's energy field to start doing pranic healing. Stop, and they said go here, and I saw this. It was actually like an old wood, so I know it's old trauma.
mm,
And so I cannot just yank that out. I have to slowly take it out. And I needed that client to help me. And I said, there is something here. It's weighing you down. Are you ready to release it? And he said, release it all. And I said, I need you to keep saying to yourself, I'm releasing it. I'm releasing it. I'm releasing it. And so therefore I started pulling it out, and it was like really old wood. It went right straight to the chest area from the front to the back. And I did it from the back. I couldn't do it from his front. I did it from the back, and I started slowly taking it out. And I just started um receiving a lot of energy, because we were trained to receive energy from all source all around us. So I was getting really hot. And I started taking it. And once I got it out, someone else saw that there was this huge big light coming out of their chest. And this person's body, because he was sitting down, it just completely, like something like, oh my God, that feels so good. It's like a huge big load came off. And that's how I pay attention when I get those messages from my ancestors. And that same person, I saw one in the back of the neck. It was an old wooden ice pick. So I know that's old trauma. It's not just in this life, it's other lives and other generational trauma. So that's I had to do the same thing again.
Mm.
Mm, and once I was done, I asked the person, have you ever had, like, I go, not heart condition, but like sometimes your chest would feel so heavy. And he go, yeah. And I said, how about your neck? Have you been having a lot of tension? I go, the shoulder blades. Have you been having a lot of, yeah. And I said, how do you feel now? He said, unusual. I don't know how else to say it, unusual. Because this is something that was just a burden. So
And
it could be a generation trauma. It could also be coming from past lives too. So in panic healing, we do not care where it's coming from. Trauma is trauma.
well, I'm sure he was so used to feeling that and carrying that, that he didn't know what that new feeling was because he hadn't felt it, or at
Hmm.
least in so very long that, how do you ascribe something that's new other than in that instant? Like, I don't know yet. I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah.
Um, I know the times that I've approached past ancestors, who have needed some help or guidance and maybe they haven't crossed all the way over. I use my mesa as like a big healing table. And a lot of the times, especially even if it's a live person who's not physically here, like I call their essence into that mesa. And it's almost like a little bitty person that I start working with and working with the energies, working with them and, doing the healing that way, bringing them into that healing space and just kind of working through whatever those issues may be, past actions, the traumas, any sort of guilt that
Mhm.
maybe that they are lingering with so that they can, peacefully evolve in whatever goes on that other side, right? We have theories, but
Mhm.
we don't necessarily know until we really get there.
Well, not no, we don't remember.
Oh, true, true. Hey, Chris. Um, Erica says, thank you for explaining. Definitely need to come get a healing again. The previous healings I've gotten to have been so healing and very insightful. Yay.
I've
um,
also have ancestors who are in the spirit world. My great grandmother. She, I guess, there's times, when you are not listening to them, and I have been told about that from my ancestors.
they
But
called you out.
yeah, they called me out because I wasn't paying attention to the messages that I was getting, and another practitioner got a hold of me. Your great grandmother is trying to get your attention to do a healing on you. So I had to do a healing on the spirit, and no, not once, but several times. And some of them were ancestors, some of them were other spirits that's not related to me. And yes, because on the take that you were saying, they're a little bit stuck, or they're reliving an event that happened when they were in the physical, and they don't know how to get past that. So yes, I've had that also. No sound.
I forgot I muted myself because I'm clicking buttons and checking screens and tabs. So, we'll be editing that. Now, for somebody new wanting to come in, You and I, we kind of made a list of how to get started. And, for me, it was always like I kind of start with who my favorite ancestors that have passed. And it's usually like a close grandparent, aunt, uncle, and doing things like when you set a family dinner, you leave or you place a table setting for
Mhm,
them.
mhm,
Um, having their pictures around is great. Like, I think a lot of people forget that that is a way to honor them by leaving them up and remembering that they were even real at one point. And then you can get into altars, and there's no one way to do an ancestral
mhm,
altar. But like you've mentioned, you have one.
mhm.
Do you have like a day a week that you do regular maintenance, if you will, for it?
Yeah, I usually honor them on a Sunday morning.
Mm,
I thank them for the week that they were there with me and guiding me to whatever life threw at me. So I do remember to thank them and I do remember to honor them. Um, unfortunately, unfortunately, I have one ancestors that's constantly decided that she can come and bother me.
wonder who that might be.
Yeah, she was a pistol in life, so she's a pistol now. But it's all good. It's fine. And I don't usually like sometimes I stop in the morning. It doesn't matter what day of the week, and I said thank you. You know, but
Mhm,
said I need to keep my office hours with you.
mhm.
But yeah, I do have that ancestor that just thinks that they can come in and talk to me whenever they feel like it.
Well, I mean, she did that when she was alive, so I'm not surprised. I would have been disappointed had she changed behavior. Like, "Oh, that's not what I thought she'd be doing." If anything, I thought she'd be more communicative because she can come and go as she wants.
But
Uh,
I usually it's Sunday. I honor all of them. I thank them. What I do is I go into meditation. I do meditation every day. Usually in the morning because it's easier for me. But on a Sunday, I call it. I go to my lab and I start bringing them into my lab. So even the ones that I don't know what they look like,
mhm,
um, but I know that their name. I know about their name, and then I say anyone else who is, you know, connected to my bloodline, please come in and join. And it gets, I get really hot because I know the energy stirring. I was like, okay, you guys need to back away for now because it's just getting too hot for me. I mean, in the wintertime, sometimes I have like the fans on in the morning in the
mhm.
winter.
It's Ohio, just crack the window. You'll have all the cool that you want. Save the electric bill, Maria. Crack a window, crack a window.
But yeah, I do honor them on a Sunday. I usually put on a Sunday is when I honor them.
See, I do a lot of mine on Mondays because that's work,
Mhm,
nothing else going on. It's easier for me to slow down and take that time. Um, and I find a lot of times while I'm driving, because again, driving can't really be doing a whole lot of else. So, it's kind of like imagining that if they were driving in the car with me, you know, and just communicating and whether or not they're really riding there, I think they are, so therefore they are. Um, like help keep me awake.
Come
Don't
to
let me
the
fall
house.
asleep while driving. Let's see. So, genealogical research helps a lot if you're wanting to know where your lineage comes from. But
Mhm,
here's the other like expanded question. So, to research now in this lifetime, see where your family, your bloodlines have come from and what those people and those traditions are. But for those of us that kind of remember past lives and other instances, it's especially if that past life was in a different cultural area, walking that fine line maybe of what society would deem appropriate versus what feels right to you.
mhm.
So I think that that's kind of like more of a personal thing that you feel comfortable
Yeah,
doing?
yeah. It becomes, for me, your connection with your ancestors is a really sacred personal journey.
Mhm,
And you start to learn a lot about yourselves that way, you know, about the past. You know, once you learn about past, now I may not agree some of the things that my ancestor believed in,
mhm,
but it worked for them. It
mhm,
doesn't have to be my belief. It doesn't have to be a part of my life. It worked for them. And also there is like different periods in life, you know, like society geared it to, you know, whatever that was going on that time, you know. And I know that some of my ancestors will be very surprised. Nowadays we can talk about spirituality. It's very open. So many of them could not do that. You know, they could not say anything. They may pick up on people. They may have the ability to be a medium. They may have the ability to be psychic. They may even have the ability to do, just be natural healers, but they could not outright say that. So
right.
a lot of them did the underground thing. A lot of them did it behind the scenes.
Mhm. Uh,
And
T and Tarot says most of my ancestors were Christian, so I honor them on Sunday with some of their favorite music and meals. And see that's the thing of like knowing who they are and what they enjoyed and doing that for them. I have a lot of coffee drinkers and my immediate, so I'm like, "Yay, me too. Here, have a cup of coffee." Um, so very, very much European, this time around. Um, and I think I've stated before that when I had genealogy done and did some ancestry work, like I was so disappointed that there was no South American because that Paco shamanism, everything like just sings to me. It feels right. And when that did not come up, I'm like, what do you mean that there is no South American right now here? What do you mean? And, I still have living ancestors in, Czech and Ireland and I'm like, that's really cool. I don't feel the like, "Ooh, let me go learn about all of that. Ooh, let me go learn those deities and that tradition and that." I'm like, "Ooh, no, it's cold. No, no, I don't want to." And so, through the classes and learning, like I made it my mission to yes, I honor the ancestors that I know now, in this lifetime who have passed and what they like. But going back farther, feeling like there are so many ancestors from South America in past lifetimes and still, carrying on that tradition and doing that healing work, but doing
mhm,
it respectfully, right? Um,
mhm,
so I think that does come down to that personal choice for somebody that, you know, if you feel a connection before and maybe a past life hypnosis would help you connect even stronger to that and understand where that's
yeah.
coming from and why maybe you feel detached from this time around of
Mhm,
what's not connecting. But I do feel that it's okay to honor ancestors from past lifetimes that you have had and that you've worked with because I feel like they're still going to be helping and working with you now.
mhm.
Um, so forgiveness work. Here can be a real touchy subject. And I think I kind of laugh and joke about it, but I think it's a good example. A, a lot of families have that creepy Uncle Joe who cross lines and do inappropriate things.
Mhm,
Learning to forgive that creepy Uncle Joe,
mhm.
and what they did, if nothing else to help you yourself, but that forgiveness and how do you approach and work with that?
And that's the same thing again. I will go into, is like, because it's a just, it's hard to, okay. I love the death rite in shaman work. I love it. Um, if I could do it all the time to do it, that would be great. Um, it's like what I was taught is like a layer of onions. You do it for yourself first in any healing work, and then the next one is the family.
Mm,
So I use myself as a conduit to eradicate any kind of karmic debt the family had racked it up over generations.
mm,
So that is something that I would love to do, you know, so, so and then I start doing I go into pranic healing. What I do is that I go into, I call it my lab is a third eye lab. And I go into a lab. I go into a meditation. I go into a lab, and I start bringing all of the family, whatever the last name that they carry over the generation, and I start calling, the Cerna clan or the Cancer clan, or I start calling
mhm.
them in because, like I said, I don't know all their names. I don't have all pictures of all of them, so I do have the family name, the last name. So I bring them all in the lab. And then I start doing them. I put them in a soft wall and I start doing the healing on that. I start giving the healing on that. So that's one way that I do it besides the shaman death, right?
Yeah, I think if you have a client who is troubled by and wanting to heal some sort of traumatic event, from a past person in their family, helping them let go of the guilt, the shame,
Mm-hmm.
any other type of feeling that is not serving them, is the great starting point
Mm-hmm.
because they're the first ones to bring this issue to light.
Mm-hmm.
So starting there is fantastic, and then moving into that ancestor. And we all will say, at least, in the store, that, mediumship and working with those that have passed is not necessarily the easy game of telephone because you can try to connect with them, and if they don't want to, they're not going to.
Exactly.
So you have to, hope that that ancestor is willing to acknowledge what happened and be willing to start that process of healing, not only for your live client, but
Mm-hmm.
for that traumatic energy that happened then. So, you know, and that's where the steps going forward kind of determine or are determined by whether or not that ancestor is willing to be like, yeah, that was me, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm genuinely sorry, or, did they just kind of like slowly back out of the room and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Um, so if you have a client, Maria, and that ancestor's like, nope, I'm not addressing it. I'm not going to go there. How do you help the client then finish their healing process if that ancestor is acting like it never happened?
Then what I would do, I will focus on the client. If that spirit does not want to acknowledge it, I will have that client disconnect, and that's where we go into the cords. I
Mhm,
will have that client, and I will actually pull the cords out, so they can disconnect.
mhm,
um, that does not mean that they're no longer part of that client's lineage. They're still a part, but I'm disconnecting the guilt. I'm disconnecting the feeling of I can't go on because Uncle Joe was so creepy and he did a lot of things to offer people. That is Uncle Joe's karma. So I'm disconnecting that cord to
mhm,
help that person, because why should you carry a burden what Uncle Joe did?
mhm.
It's not your burden to bear.
Right.
So having that, getting that cord disconnected, and then having that person, whether Uncle Joe wants to acknowledge it or not, just forgive them. Forgive them. And the one thing that I do sometimes ask my client is write a letter, address it to that person, put all your feelings down in that letter. It has to be handwritten. And then, you're going to go through some shock because some of the things are going to start maybe stories that you heard about Uncle Joe going to start popping in your head. You're going to be shocked. You're going to get angry. and then you might end up crying, feeling sad, bad about some of the people that that person have hurt. It's just a
Mhm.
grieving process. You're purging, and then you take it out and you burn it. There's another way of getting rid of and just disconnecting the energy cord.
So, guys, if you have questions or comments, feel free to type it in. We'll answer them as best as we can. Right, yeah, burn that letter and let them go. Um,
Yes.
and the great thing with fire is it's transmutation.
Hmm.
So it's taking that, sending that up so it can become a more light-based, positive outcome from going through all of that emotion while you're writing it out. I myself used to kind of be like, "Oh my God, writing letters, blah, journaling." And, after the fire we had at the store, like I did it and I'm like, "Oh, wow, this actually works." And just letting out stuff. And I'm like, well, gosh darn, I guess I take back every negative thing. I'm like, oh, that's so dumb. It's just writing. What are you supposed to do with it later? Like there's benefit. I can say, yay. Um, uh, hello. Since I've been chatting about this with friends in the past few days in the context of self healing and ending generational trauma responses and patterns. Crazy to come across this. Well, hello and welcome.
Really?
And that's the thing, right? There's a lot of stuff that can be handed down generation to generation to generation,
Hmm.
be it types of behavior, good and bad. And,
Hmm.
a lot of the big healing comes from breaking negative behaviors and negative actions that keep
Hmm.
being handed down. For instance, a parent that, is quick to hit and ask questions later,
Hmm.
learning to communicate with child before you're just dealing out corporal punishment, you know, or not allowing two children have feelings, have opinions, just breaking those type of things. So that is no longer a trauma that you are passing down onto those who are unsuspecting, right? They're
Hmm.
coming in happy little beings from the other side, and then, we're handing them burdens. Well, what can we take off that plate before they even come here so they're not immediately burdened with these type of things? Um, Generational trauma is one of the most common issues that come across from my clients. A lot of forgiveness can come when you realize that they were also hurt. Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah.
What is the saying? A hurt person hurts others.
Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes that's one thing that we find it hard to believe or are hard to accept. If we are somebody that had a troublesome childhood, neglectful parents, hateful parents, mean parents, whatever you want to say, but realizing that they were taught that
Hmm.
and they were hurt as well, and maybe in some instances they were doing the best that they knew how, even if it wasn't great for you,
Hmm.
and that can be a hard one to swallow and take in and go, "Yeah, okay."
And that's what I usually find with clients who have trauma in childhood.
Mhm.
First, your first set of teachers are your parents. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, and then I had to get the client to see from the parents' perspective. I go, this is not an excuse. This is not, to not hold them accountable, but this is for you to understand where they're coming from.
Mhm.
And once you understand the pattern and where they're coming from, then you can break that pattern and not continue it into the lineage, into the next generation.
And in a
So,
way, that's not only healing the client, but for the parent, maybe who has passed, who is saying, "Here's why." And maybe
hmm
they're coming to that understanding, and that's a part of their healing process on that other side, is because they're having that realization and they are sharing it forward. And that
Yes.
I would say there's usually an apology coming with that as well.
Yes.
Um, Dixon says, absolutely. Alcoholism, sexual trauma, addiction, etc. I imagine they come out of the dark past and now we must heal them together. Thanks for having this combo. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank
Um, it's those who know me know that I love true crime. And of course, just watching some of these instances, it's a perfect example of what was taught and what was handed down. So many, and no, I'm not advocating and that they're, great.
you.
But, when you get into their childhoods and their relationships with their parents and what happened, and then you're like, holy cow,
Mhm,
okay. Um, it's mind blowing and it's also saddening, to know that. And thankfully that was stopped by them finally being put in jail, but
mhm.
fortunately. Um, Another thing I find that happens often is clients' grandparents come through in spirit to shed light on how that affected their parents' abusive patterns and apology. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have had and it's not so much on when the healing. There's a few in the healing, but also in the reading that comes through
Hmm.
where I said this is not an apology, but I had someone look at someone. It was an absent father, so I had this client. I said it's not an apology, but I want you to understand where he was coming from. This was he was not taught how to be a parent because he never had the example,
Hmm.
and we start, and it's I love it because when it comes to ancestral healing, I love it because you don't just help the client in the living, you help the client in spirit.
Hmm.
And it's like that is such a great feeling because when that spirit has a little bit of a release or they purge and continue on to where they need to go or the next level that they need to go. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Good comments, guys, and questions. Keep sharing if you would like. Now, I think we kind of skipped over this part because we got into some good questions, but the benefits of actually going through ancestral healing, more than just the, oh, I feel better now, which is great in and of
Well, that's
itself,
always
but
the
it's not
first thing that comes.
the only. Right. We are a part of the broader story, ancestors, hopes, and dreams. And one thing to remember, and sometimes this is a scary thought, we are going to be somebody's ancestor one day.
Hmm.
So, how do you want that to be presented? And what can you put out there? Right. So, most of us are going to become somebody's ancestor.
Uh-huh.
What are they going to say? you know,
What were you thinking?
I was kind of thinking that. I'm like, do I say that out loud or do I not? I can't wait to be the unhinged. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, like, what are they going to say about that great Aunt Maria? Here's what she did. You know, and I'm sure there will be jokes, but there will also be like, wow, she was doing a lot of healing work. She was
Yeah.
doing, she helped start this. Um, and then the hypothetical question, is it better to be known as the ancestor who broke the bonds and go, or to be almost quietly forgotten in a way because you broke it so well that at a certain point, the new members don't even know it happened, so they don't even have to talk about it. Discuss. Debate. Um, Chris says, "I see it."
I think I would like to be the quiet one, but
Mhm,
I know what I did. I know that I did to break whatever that needed to be needed not broken, but needed to be enlightened, released. So if I'm not remembered down in the next generations, I'm okay with that
hmm,
because I know what I did.
right.
Yeah.
So Chris says, I see a lot of this doing mediumship readings. Many times they come through and acknowledge that they see the error of their ways and not looking for forgiveness, but acknowledging they hurt others.
Yes. Yes, I've had a lot of in the readings also. And so I usually, when I bring up something, I said, this is not to excuse the
Mhm.
behavior. And I do have clients, ancestors who apologize. And I said, you can just, I go, I'm just saying what is coming through. You can take it with a grain of salt. It's on your ball court now to choose it and release it.
Now, if we wanted to summon, Spirit is funny, she said, "Come with a glass of wine and some chicken shawarma." So now I'm like, how would they summon me? Probably coffee. Have some Typo Negative playing, coffee. That'd be a good start. How would they summon you, Maria?
Chocolate.
That was quick. There was no hesitation. It was
Yeah,
coffee.
chocolate. No hesitating on that. Yeah, chocolate.
I wonder if we can summon Hawaiian grandma with some M&Ms because
No, it's coffee candy.
coffee
Coffee
candy.
M&Ms. Yeah, coffee and oh, she drove me crazy with that. I had
Well,
to
and they
find
quit
coffee
making
M&Ms.
yeah, they quit making those coffee ones. That's why I'm like, well,
Yes. Yeah.
um, all right, she's got me. She's like coffee, Celsius, and crochet yarn. Yeah, pretty much. um, let's see. I hear the quote that you have 3 deaths, and your final death is when your name is spoken for the last time. I hope by the time I'm not spoken about anymore that I've done the best I could to help the upcoming generations. Right.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, I don't know how well or the likelihood of me actually being an ancestor because I have 1 kid and he's like, I'm not having kids. So I may not be. I might have to come bug somebody else's family to be like, well, I have none of my own to bug. I'm coming over here. Um, but you know, but I'm okay with that. I don't feel the need to keep passing down or to keep having more people in the bloodline. Like I'm good. T and Tarot says we call an ambassador of your bloodline. We are ancestors and also future generations. We make our lineage better for ourselves if we come back. I like that. We can summon Chris with bourbon and fruit snacks.
The bourbon part, bourbon and
Hey.
chocolate.
Mhm. Well, I'm gonna get summoned by Calavera. So, well, I'll have somebody to hang out with because I won't have, other than my kid when he's gone, whatnot. Um, right, I was thinking that, yeah, I was like, "What is that Disney movie?" And that was such a good, sweet movie. I may or may not have, sniffled at the end. Um, hey, Lisa. We're talking about ancestors, ancestral healing. Now we're just kind of goofing off a little bit. Because I think we went over a lot of the important parts. What we didn't go over yet, as I'm saying this, is like what it's not. And the big thing is, it is not to replace medical advice from your actual PhD certified medical doctor with a practice in hospital insurance. Like they take care of this while we help take care of this. So that's the biggest thing that it is not, and it's not an excuse to ignore other important issues either.
And it's not to diagnose yourself.
Mhm.
Well,
I do it all the time with WebMD.
so this aunt did this, so and she had this, so maybe I have that. No, none of that.
Mhm, mhm. Coco makes me cry every time. Right, right. Um, it's a really good it's really good movie, Lisa. You should definitely check it out. Well, I'm going on somebody's altar. There we go. Oh, yay. Right, because I think that was one of the, main things in the movie Coco was, like, remembering and not forgetting names and,
Mhm.
doing that
Oh,
work.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it was so good. There was another one that Disney Pixar put out a couple years ago that was more spiritual than I realized, and it was that little soul that did not wanna get reincarnated.
Mhm.
Oh,
I
that
can't
one was a
remember
good
the
one.
title.
Yeah, me either. I can tell you everything else about it, but I can't think of the title, and that one was a really good one and a little bit of a, I leaked from the eyeball with that one. Um,
I wonder if they got that because there is Neil Donald Walsh. He made the book Conversation with God, but he made a children one. It's called The Little Soul in the Sun,
oh,
and it's about this soul getting ready to come down to the earth plane, and the lesson he has to come up with a lesson he wants to learn. So he told the Great Spirit, God, whatever it is you want to call him, he wants to learn forgiveness. So when he went into the Sea of Souls, said, "Who's going to teach this little soul uh, the lesson of forgiveness?" Nobody wanted to do because that's a big thing to go through, and nobody except one person way in the back, and he had this person come up front, and before they descend, the soul said, "Little soul, when I help you to learn this lesson, please do not forget about me." I was
mm,
like, what big lesson is that going to be?" Yeah,
oof,
yeah.
oof,
And I didn't realize that some of the books that he has written for children are really soul geared lessons,
mm. Those
understanding.
those are heavy, heavy themes,
Yeah.
um, but very good themes. Lisa says, "Mom has been gone for a year. I don't know how I feel about calling on her."
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. But if you are curious and you want more information of certain things that happen, or if you just want to forgive her, just the letter writing. That's when it comes in. You don't have to call her. You can just do the letter writing.
Mhm. And maybe calling on her, maybe not in a way to solve issues or problems, but
Mhm.
just like if she enjoyed cooking, just while you're cooking a meal, just ask her to come chat with you while cooking a meal. That way it's not like a job, right? You want to enjoy that time, and that you can do that with any ancestor, but in this case, just purposefully doing activities maybe that she liked and asking her to join you in them.
Mhm.
And then it won't feel so heavy to work with her. Um, Sort of says, I wasn't calling on my mom, but she was calling on me. There's been a cardinal outside my front door in the same spot for like 2 weeks, sings louder and louder when I come out looking right at me. My mom always loved cardinals, you know? They'll yell if you're not paying attention.
Oh yeah.
They're great at finally, getting their way.
Mhm.
So yeah, that movie's title was Soul. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It was a really good movie. I feel like it should have gotten more attention than just going straight to Disney streaming, because it was good. Uh, so what about super religious ancestors? Is it wrong to call them if they completely disagreed with this stuff, like if they found it evil? You know, that can go first, 2 ways I can think of. Either where they are at, it is still to them so evil, so maybe not. The other thought would be because they have crossed over and learned and elevated their soul, they'll see that it's not and they would be willing to do it. And I guess the only way to find out which way that goes is to try and call on them and see what they say.
Mhm.
If they are in disagreement, they'll let you know, and then, you just don't work with them again.
Mhm. I found that out with my mother. Um, Fundamental Catholic, did not want to, and I guess because when she was little, there were some ancestors in the bloodline that were deemed crazy. So there were things I was doing when I was younger, sleepwalk, talking to people that she does not see, scared the heck out of her. Did not and help kind of help demolish that and not and put me in so many Sunday schools and drag me to church and all of this. And told me I can't say anything or you know. So I was geared for her to please her, and I didn't do any of that. But once she crossed over, she understood, and yeah, sometimes when they do cross over, they see a bigger picture, and I also think that was her lesson. So I kind of let it go.
Now, here's a question that just came to mind. I have no ready answer for this, so I'm gonna ask you and put you on the hot spot.
Oh, gee.
Haha, dun dun dun. An ancestor, so let's say a close family member passes and they've been gone for, 5, 10, 15 years. If they reincarnate, how do you work with them still?
Reincarnate as another ancestor or reincarnate as a different person totally outside of the family? Because
Either
that
or.
happens too.
Yeah,
That
either
happens.
or.
If they're reincarnate and I have and I because I when I look into a person's energy field and I notice, oh, you just came back. Okay. This is gonna be fun. I like to do a hypnosis and find out more information.
Mm,
Energy work is something that I would not go to. I would love to regress them and see how much of the memory, or if they're going to bring them back to the last one. That would be interesting to find out,
mm.
especially if there were a lot of things that were happening in their life. They just don't understand why it's happening or why they're making these type of choices. That's what I would love to do is just get them to a regression.
As you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking out, and I think if they were to reincarnate close to you, be it a family line or maybe not even a bloodline, but good family friends that the families have hung out and they come through. Like there is some school of thought that the higher self of that being is obviously still on the other side that you can connect to
Mm-hmm.
and work with. So rather than having, the spirit, behind you or talking or however you perceive that, now it might be a knowing or
Mm-hmm.
just an understanding because maybe now that great grandma now is, this little bitty thing that just came into the world and, still wearing diapers and can't really talk about things yet. So, but they're there, but that higher self is still accessible and is still willing to work with you,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case. Um, right? Kind of like what Chris just said, we are multidimensional, can be in
Mm-hmm.
multiple realities. So, connecting in. Um, she also says my grandma was very Baptist and a Bible thumper, and now she is one of my biggest helpers because she gets it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So um I think maybe some people will be like, wow, my favorite grandpa passed, blah, blah, blah. And then the thought of maybe that favorite grandpa coming back, now you don't have that ancestor, and that could be a little bit
Mm-mm.
of a disappointment,
Yeah.
if grandpa came back as little Joey, doing 6 months. So, not necessarily that you can't interact with grandpa anymore.
And well, another thing to think about when we're talking about spirit is that we have made agreements of lessons we want to learn in the physical, but we also made agreements. And when we're sleeping, part of our soul does leave the body and does a spiritual work. So when you take it in that respect, when you're in spirit and you reincarnate, part of your
Mhm.
soul is still part of the collective in the spirit world.
So
Mhm.
hopefully, yeah, if you guys have any more questions or, comments, feel free to ask and type away. We'll be wrapping up here soon. I think I keep checking our notes sheet to make sure we covered everything. And I think we have. So now we're just kind of having fun with our friends who are joining us. Um, okay. I see this final sentence: maintaining healthy boundaries between living and the deceased. Office hours.
Yes. 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 But some of your ancestors, like I have one, that doesn't know the boundaries because they don't live in a time sequence. You
Mhm.
know, we have time, we have clocks, we have day, night. They don't live in that world. So
Mm-mm.
to them, there is no time, there's no space. Yeah, so you might have to keep reminding them the boundaries that you are in the physical. You do have things to do.
Mhm. You have to go to work. You need to get sleep, uninterrupted sleep.
Yeah,
You may have children that need your attention, homework and playing and not, fighting and killing one another.
yeah.
So, um,
Just kind of reminding them of that because you might have ancestors who say, "Oh, I had this great idea. let me
right.
let me go down there and just relate this idea."
Oh, right. Yeah. Do ancestors have ADD when they cross over?
It seems like it. It's not fun when you are waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they kept on talking to you and you just got your body just got up.
Jennifer says, I had someone tell me that my husband and I have been together in previous lives. When you reincarnate, do you end up with the same people? You can.
Yeah, and you may switch roles.
Mhm.
That has happened. Um, and it's geared to the lessons you want to learn. So if you want to know how it is to be a mother to your mother in this life, it might happen in the next life or two lives after that. If you
Mhm.
want to learn how it was to be a male like your brother, you may switch roles. You may be siblings, you may be friends. It can happen.
Yeah, because you can reincarnate not in a bloodline. You can just
Yeah,
be, friends that keep coming
yeah,
around.
yeah.
Though I've already warned my son I am not coming back, so if he comes back, he's on his own. Um, right? Soul groups, they are friends, family, and pets.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Are some ancestors not reachable because they have reached some sort of nirvana, gone to these summer lands? That I don't know. I would.
No, I don't know that. I mean, because one thing I know about ancestors is that the ones that you always have ancestors around you. You may not, there may be a certain ones that may come to you more than, whatever, because you feel the comfortable of their energy. I don't know about the nirvana. That's something that I can't say now because I'm in the human form.
Mhm.
Maybe if I'm in the spirit form, it might be different.
So we need to have death rights again.
Yes.
Go get some questions answered.
Yes.
That too was my favorite weekend.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
like, let me die for 5 minutes and go over and have a vacation and learn some stuff and come back, and, that was the best weekend.
Mhm.
I would like to think if you can't reach them, it's not necessarily because they're so more elevated than you necessarily, because I hope that's not what you're thinking, is that they're so much higher than you. I would think that, because if they are so far back, like removed generationally, that having that connection, I find that ancestors closer to me are easier to connect with because you had that interconnection to start with the grandparents, the uncles, the great
Mhm.
grandparents, and so on. But when you get so far back, to have a picture and a face doesn't really tell
No.
you who they were. So I think that missing interconnection in the human life might make it harder to reach them. And I would say to keep trying if you have an idea of a name and a face and, just kind of searching them out. But like we said before, even with mediumship readings, just because you knock on the door doesn't mean they're going to answer for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And maybe it's because they don't agree with that type of communication, or maybe they're not done learning what they need to learn before they can share to you, in this lifetime. So, um,
And sometimes you might need to see a practitioner. Like, for example, my great grandfather, he interests me. I wanted to know as much as I can. There was I had no photo of him. I did not know what he looked like. I knew his name. I just did not know what he looked like. So I tried several numerous times trying to contact him, and I could not contact him. He could not come through. And I thought, I was questioning, okay, maybe he doesn't want to talk to me. So it took my shaman teacher, Zane, and I went to see him, and I asked him. I said, I'm trying to contact my great grandfather. He's not listening. I can't get him in. And he said, how are you contacting him? And I said, well, I asked him. I say his name, and I asked him to please, come step forward. Da da da. He said, that's not how he wants you to contact him. I said, well, how am I supposed to contact him? He wants you to demand his presence because he knows that you're serious then. So it took the shaman teacher for me to connect to my great grandfather. I just thought the man was stubborn. But it was a way, there was a certain way that he wanted me to contact him, so he know that I would be serious, you know.
I mean, I can see that, um, to make sure that you're not just talk to them once or twice and then, be over
Mhm.
it and, forget to do it going forward.
Yeah.
Uh, Lisa says, I told my family that I have to be the last to go because they won't let me rest without asking me where their things are, keys, phones. Yeah. Um, a mother's and wife's girlfriend's work is never done, right? Um, never ever done. Um, even my friend Marianne says that, women tend to outlive, men. And, the joke being is because men tend to do silly, stupid things that put themselves in danger. And, we're always the one running around trying to fix the things and save the things. And, um, but the heartwarming part of that was that, most of the nursing homes are full of the little old husbands waiting for their wives to pass so they can cross together. And I'm like, well, that's very sweet. And I go, well, what about the little old lady? She's like, oh no, we just get out. We're done. We leave. And I'm like, well, let's not tell the husbands that. Like, we're out. We're done. We're tired. We're gonna go
You're
get a
on
quick
your own.
massage and take a nap. But all right, guys. Well, I feel like we had a pretty good conversation on this topic, and we had some good fun comments and thought provoking questions in there. Next week, we are actually going to be live at 7:30 because we have a guest joining us, and we're going to go over working with crystal skulls. Uh,
Mhm.
getting messages and some healing work. And Maria, you're on the healing side, and our guest Calavera, the message side.
Mhm.
And I told her, I said, maybe we should, not that we have time, but if we all got our crystal skulls together and lined them up, like how many would we all have?
A lot. I can tell you I have a lot.
I can feel Calavera going, oh crap, and like trying to count them all real quick. Like, how many do you have? Because you just got a new one. Uh, Pictures, of your new friend baby, skull baby. And they were in the store on Saturday, right? How many do you have, ma'am? Do you have an addiction? Uh, Lisa's like, I have one. Um, how many? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I have 9. I think I have 9. Yeah. If I'm picturing the top of the cabinet at the store correctly. 3, 4. Yeah, I think I have 9.
Well, originally I had 13. And then I inherited a slew of them again.
Uh-huh.
So we're up to 20, I think like 26, 28. We're pretty close to 30.
Well,
I can't line up all 30. There's no way. There's not enough in the
Chris
camera.
says she's got about 20, and Calavera said, "Be right back, I'm counting." She estimated at least 70 to 75.
Oh, she has more than okay.
I think she's got a problem. I think we need to have an intervention.
A skull in the intervention.
Yes, yes. Though I have joked before that maybe we should start a monthly skull get together, Crystal Skulls Anonymous. We have problems. We keep collecting.
I plan to have stopped at 13, but when a skull picks you, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You know that.
Well,
There's
I'm
nothing.
being stared at right now by one that I didn't plan on getting, insisted on coming to me. Actually, I'm being stared at in 2 directions because I've got the amethyst one right here, and then the one that you just consecrated for me, like on the mesa, staring right at me. So, yeah, right? Chris is like, that's a great idea. Crystal Skulls Anonymous. Bring it on. See, have a crystal skull council. What all are they channeling in? What do we need to know? Like, don't forget to file your taxes today. Like, if you haven't. Oh, she's got 80.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've decided that we are going to have an intervention at your place. Um, Oh, Lisa's like, I love the little dating profiles you created for them in the store, right? We haven't done that in a while. We should do that. Make little dating profiles for the skulls that we're in the store. That was always so much fun, and our friend Sandy enjoyed doing that with us. And just recently, Facebook was like, "Here's a memory," and it was Sandy and I in Tucson 2 years ago, and all we are is just laughing because of these profiles that she wrote up. Um, so that was always fun. She's like, "This is the intervention." We're showing up with clipboards and papers and pens, some Florida water. I don't know what you're bringing, Maria, but we are gonna an intervention on Calavera there. How do you have room for your fiance, ma'am, with all them skulls? Where does he fit in? He gets a little corner in the back, right? But yeah, next week, crystal skulls and healing and working with, and how to get in touch with and connect with them. Because it's actually easier than you think, at least in my experience. Yeah, Sandy.
Yeah.
Or how dare she leave us? Sandy, I claim Sandy on my ancestor altar. He sleeps in the shed. One actually, yeah, maybe 10, because I have a walking ancestor profile or altar now because this was Sandy's and he's in my pocket with me every day. He little Olaf. He's in a pocket. He's with me. He was hers. She bought him because he was so ugly. Nobody else would love him like she could. So I have her little Orloff skull now. But yes, come join us, Sandy. Have fun in this conversation. Maybe what we could do for funsies, Maria and Calavera and I, we can take pictures of our different skulls and post them leading up to that live. Right? Orloff, hey you guys. Um, just to show and like I think a lot of people assume that when you hear crystal skull, it has to be all nice, clear quartz and like
Yeah.
it should really be gemstone skulls, right? Because they can be carved out of anything. And like you even have petrified wood. So it doesn't have to be just quartz crystal. They carved out of anything. Uh,
No, yeah. I have
so
petrified wood. I have quite a few of those.
do you have two? Do you have one from grandma?
I
Did
have
she?
grandma's, I have Lulu, and I have Pono. I got 3.
Okay. So yeah, they carved out of even non-gemstone type things, petrified
Mm-hmm.
wood. Aw, thank you. He is adorable. He's but so next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Uh the three of us with Calavera, being number 3, going to go over some crystal skull workings. And so come with questions, experiences, and come have a good time for some crystal
Bring
skull check.
bring your skulls with you too. Have them in front of the camera or just
Hmm.
line them up if you have any.
Yeah. I mean, they could all be talking amongst one another.
Exactly.
Mhm. Sharing info, sharing what they've learned with one another. And then that way, when you're communicating with them, you get that too. So, but yeah, we'll be on all of the platforms like we are tonight, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And we look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. Bye, guys.
Bye.